what's your name?
Well, my name is Jim, but most people call me Jim.
Then we're awake, but we're very puzzled.
And that's how I got the part of the Waco Kid, which I told him about the first time he mentioned it.
Everyone remembers the laughs, the outrageous scenes, the chaos that made Blazing Saddles a classic. But what if the most unforgettable part of the film wasn't the madness on the surface, but something much quieter, hidden in plain sight? Gene Wilder didn't just play a part. He changed the entire tone of the movie in ways most viewers never realized. There's a reason his performance still stands out after all these years, and it all traces back to one unexpected moment behind the scenes that no one saw coming. Curious what you missed? Let's start there. A role rewritten by chance. When Mel Brooks started production on Blazing Saddles, the part of the Waco Kid had already been given to Gig Young, a respected veteran actor with an Academy Award to his name. On paper, he looked ideal for the part, a polished, experienced man who could bring depth to the worn-out gunfighter. But things unraveled almost right away. On day one, Young showed alarming symptoms, sweating heavily, trembling, and unable to speak his lines clearly. At first, some crew members believed he might be using a method acting technique. Unfortunately, the reality was much worse. Young was experiencing severe alcohol withdrawal. By midday, he collapsed.
Got a young Jew from New York to play this Western, and he was magnificent.
Rather than go through casting sessions or formal offers, Brooks reached out to someone he trusted completely, Gene Wilder. The two had worked together on The Producers, and Brooks was confident in Wilder's ability to rise to the occasion. What's remarkable is how little Wilder needed before accepting. Brooks said that Wilder didn't ask for the script, salary, or even what the part was. He just agreed and was on a plane the next day. This wasn't a career move, it was a personal favor and maybe even a last-minute save for a film on the edge of failure. There's something almost legendary about how fast Wilder made the role his own. While many actors spend weeks or even months getting ready, Wilder had only a few hours. Still, when filming began, he slipped into the Waco Kid skin like he'd been there all along. What made his version stand out wasn't just acting skill. He could stay grounded in the middle of the chaos. What started as a casting emergency became a defining performance. But how did Wilder turn a last-minute role into the film's emotional core? The answer lies in a bold choice most actors would have never made. The power of stillness in a storm. Gene Wilder's plan to play the Waco Kid calmly and seriously wasn't random. It was something he decided before he even arrived on set. Mel Brooks shared that Wilder only agreed to take the role if he could avoid playing it for laughs. In a movie packed with wild humor, silly gags, and moments that broke the fourth wall, Wilder wanted his performance to be quiet and almost sad. He wasn't trying to grab attention. He knew that being the calm one in a noisy room could be even more powerful. Wilder kept his voice low, his movements minimal. This gave the Waco Kid a kind of deep seriousness that made all the craziness around him feel even bigger. This choice wasn't just about style, it gave the movie structure. According to CBR, the film's plot centered on a black railroad laborer, Bart, immediately confronted by the racial prejudices of the townspeople, demanded a serious emotional thread to balance its satirical tone, which Wilder's performance helped provide. Mel Brooks later said that Wilder's calmness was what helped hold Blazing Saddles together. While characters like Hedley Lamar and Mongo leaned into being over the top, the Waco Kid came across as someone worn out by life, looking back on his past with tired eyes. In the now famous jailhouse scene where he talks about losing his nerve, Wilder didn't treat it like a joke. He said the lines with a heaviness that made it both funny and touching. Without this emotional layer, the film might have felt too silly to stick. What's more, Wilder's choice likely matched his own personality. People who worked with him often described him as careful, thoughtful, and honest in his emotions. So, in a way, the Waco Kid wasn't just a role, it was a reflection of who Wilder was. He didn't need to shout or act wild to be remembered. Wilder's decision to play it straight changed the tone of the entire film. But what if his greatest on-screen partner never got the chance to share that space with him? The comedy duo that almost was. Before Blazing Saddles reached audiences, Richard Pryor was closely connected to the film, not just as a writer, but as the actor first picked to play Sheriff Bart. Mel Brooks, aware of Pryor's sharp humor and cultural impact, strongly supported him for the part. Pryor's voice helped shape the movie from the ground up, especially its bold takes on race and authority in America. While his work as a writer stayed in the final film, his shot at playing Bart was suddenly taken away. Studio heads at Warner Brothers, concerned about Pryor's public image and personal struggles, refused to let him take the lead. Gene Wilder would later talk about what might have been if Pryor had been his co-star. The two later became known for their chemistry in films like Silver Streak and Stir Crazy, where their different styles played off each other perfectly. If Pryor had starred in Blazing Saddles, their iconic partnership might have started much earlier. Wilder never spoke bitterly about it, but he did understand that their unique mix could have shifted the tone of the film. Would the Waco Kid's quiet depth have felt different next to Pryor's high energy? That question still lingers years later. Even though Pryor wasn't on screen, his mark is all over the movie. His ideas are felt in the way the jokes flow and in the sharp edge behind the humor.
Chewing gum online, eh? I hope you brought enough for everybody.
I didn't know there was gonna be so many.
Boy, is he strict.
Cleavon Little brought strength and charm to the role of Bart, but many of the biting lines carried Pryor's influence. Wilder himself pointed to Pryor's work on the script as giving the film its punch. In many ways, Pryor helped shape his courage and truth, even without appearing in front of the camera. It's rare for someone to affect a movie this deeply without ever being seen, but Pryor did just that. Blazing Saddles may have missed the chance to unite two comedy icons on screen, but what Gene Wilder did behind the camera during the chaos may be even more revealing than any lost performance. The quiet guide behind the madness. Even though Blazing Saddles is remembered for its wild humor, the atmosphere off-camera was often tense and demanding. The team was constantly pushing creative limits, dealing with studio concerns, and handling unpredictable situations on set. Through it all, Gene Wilder became a quiet, steady presence. While Mel Brooks brought energy and bold direction, it was Wilder's calmness that helped keep things balanced. People who worked on the film said that he rarely raised his voice or tried to take the spotlight, but just having him around helped ease the pressure. Wilder didn't just act, he supported others in meaningful ways. Between takes, he would offer helpful tips to newer or less experienced cast members. He didn't lecture or take over. Instead, he gave simple, useful notes, changing a word's emphasis here, adjusting timing there. His background in theater and his earlier work with Brooks on The Producers had taught him how to make small moments count. At the time, his guidance might not have stood out, but looking back, many realized how much he shaped key scenes without drawing focus. Some even referred to him as the unofficial director of tone, the person who helped the film walk the line between being too serious or too silly. Another piece of Wilder's behind-the-scenes legacy came from something not directly related to Blazing Saddles at all: the beginning of Young Frankenstein. During downtime on set, Wilder shared an idea with Brooks about a man who wanted nothing to do with his famous ancestor, Dr. Frankenstein. That small idea, brought up between takes, later turned into one of the best-known comedy films of all time. Wilder was more than just a steady hand. He was a spark of creativity between takes. But one offhand comment during filming would grow into something far bigger than anyone expected. Pain behind the punchlines. Gene Wilder's take on the Waco Kid in Blazing Saddles is widely remembered for its calm delivery and well-timed humor. But if you look closer, his performance carries a surprising emotional depth. More than just playing the role of a washed-up gunslinger for laughs, Wilder showed the Waco Kid as a man carrying heavy wounds, haunted by his past and worn out by the world around him. Known for his emotional range, Wilder didn't treat the role lightly. While many characters leaned into big, loud comedy, Wilder gave the kid a sense of quiet sadness. His drinking and distant behavior didn't feel like just a joke. They came from a believable place of loss. For viewers who return to the film, it becomes clearer how Wilder holds back in scenes that others might have made bigger or more ridiculous. One scene in particular, where the kid talks about once being the fastest gun in the West, isn't full of pride. Instead, his voice carries a sense of sorrow. It doesn't sound like he's bragging, it sounds like he's admitting something he wishes he could forget. What stands out most is how Wilder used quiet moments in silence to show the Waco Kid's inner struggle. In most comedies, the laughs come from fast lines and loud reactions. But Wilder's strength came from slowing things down. His quiet pauses and still expressions said more than words could. This gave the character a sense of depth that's easy to overlook if you're only watching for jokes.
I expected he would go, but I don't know, when it happens, it's still tremendous. It's a big shock, you know? I'm still reeling from that no more Gene, I can't call him.
Mel Brooks later said that Gene added an emotional layer to the part that hadn't been written into the script. This wasn't about trying to be serious in a funny film. It was about understanding that sometimes the funniest people are the ones who carry the most pain. Wilder's performance carried more than just comedic timing. It carried sorrow. But what if some of his most revealing moments were never seen at all? The scenes that laughter erased.
Well, I met him when my late wife, Anne Bancroft, was doing Mother Courage. Gene was in it, he was the chaplain. And he kept saying, why are they laughing? Because the chaplain is a great part. It's sad and funny, it's touching, and it can be amusing.
Even though Gene Wilder seemed calm and collected on screen in Blazing Saddles, many of his standout scenes nearly didn't make it into the finished movie, not because he made mistakes, but because the people around him couldn't stop laughing. Wilder's quiet delivery and perfect sense of timing often surprised the crew, making it nearly impossible to get through a full take without someone breaking. Several crew members have said that some of the most hilarious scenes had to be filmed over and over, simply because someone off camera would lose control. A constant issue during filming came from scenes where Wilder's calm lines hit so unexpectedly that camera operators and sound crew couldn't hide their reactions. These weren't big, loud jokes meant to draw applause. They were quiet, strange lines that worked so well because they clashed with the madness around them. People behind the scenes couldn't help but laugh, and even Cleavon Little had a hard time staying serious during those takes. There were also parts of the Waco Kid story that never made it into the final cut. Some scenes explored the character's background in more detail, giving more insight into what made him the way he was. These moments, according to people who worked on the movie, gave Wilder the chance to show more emotion and depth. But some of Wilder's best scenes didn't survive the cutting room. Still, what he chose not to do may have been just as bold as what made the final cut. Breaking the rules with a whisper. Gene Wilder's style of comedy in Blazing Saddles went against what Hollywood typically expected. At a time when most funny performances relied on loud expressions, big reactions, and physical humor, Wilder chose a different path. His take on the Waco Kid avoided the usual patterns. There were no exaggerated faces, no knowing looks at the camera, and no trying too hard to get a laugh. Instead, he used quiet moments, careful timing, and stillness to deliver some of the film's most effective scenes. One standout example is his first appearance in the jail cell. Slumped on a bed, half drunk and uninterested, he spoke with almost no effort, but the impact was lasting. The scene didn't call attention to itself. It let the audience lean in. What made this choice so bold wasn't just that it avoided common jokes, but that it went against the way movie comedies had looked for years. In a film where everyone else pushed limits and went big, Wilder pulled things back. This wasn't by chance. It was on purpose, and it was a risk. In the 1970s, comedy often rewarded those who were loud and bold. But Wilder showed that holding back could be just as strong. When he said lines like, "Are we awake?" with flat sarcasm and calm eyes, it was funny not because he acted silly, but because it felt real. That honesty made the Waco Kid feel like someone who had been through too much, adding more emotion than the script spelled out. Wilder's quiet resistance to the usual way of doing things wasn't limited to this one movie. It reflected his overall way of working. He didn't try to take over scenes or outshine his co-stars. That kind of approach showed respect for the story, the script, and the people watching. Wilder went against the grain, rejecting the loud and expected. But while he was quietly transforming comedy, something else was forming behind the scenes, something that would soon redefine another genre entirely. A monster idea between takes. The idea for Young Frankenstein didn't start in a writer's room. It began during downtime on the chaotic set of Blazing Saddles. Between takes, Gene Wilder casually asked Mel Brooks, "What if the grandson of Dr. Frankenstein wanted nothing to do with the family name?" That passing comment became the early seed for Young Frankenstein, a movie that would later change how horror and comedy could blend. What's surprising is that this famous concept didn't come from a planned session, but from a quiet moment in the middle of another demanding film. At first, Mel Brooks didn't take the idea seriously. Both he and Wilder later said that Brooks brushed it off at the time. His mind was already full with the challenges of Blazing Saddles, a movie with a lot of moving parts. But Wilder didn't let the idea go. Instead of pushing hard, he stayed focused and wrote a draft on his own. He believed in it enough to start writing without being asked. Once Brooks finally read what Wilder had come up with, he quickly changed his opinion. The script mixed clever humor with heartfelt moments, all while honoring the old monster movies. Just days later, that simple idea turned into a serious project. Without the open and creative space they had while working on Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein might never have been made. This shift marked a turning point in Wilder's career. He had already shown he was a strong comedic actor, but Young Frankenstein proved he could also help shape stories from behind the scenes. Looking back, Blazing Saddles wasn't only a high point in comedy, it was also the springboard for one of the smartest and most beloved genre parodies of all time. But while he was building something new, he was also standing firm against an old enemy. Courage without a spotlight. Gene Wilder's contribution to Blazing Saddles went far beyond what audiences saw on screen. While his performance as the Waco Kid remains one of the film's most memorable elements, behind the scenes, Wilder was a steadfast supporter of Mel Brooks during the film's most heated creative battles. Warner Brothers executives were uneasy about the movie's bold use of racial satire, profanity, and its unapologetic take on American social issues. The script is loaded with racial epithets and off-color jokes, critic Morgan Shawnette noted. But Brooks is a sharp enough satirist to ensure that Bart is never the butt of the joke, and that Rockridge's bigotry is shown to be just as ridiculous as any other gag in this farce. Notes from the studio poured in, urging changes to the script, softer language, and the removal of scenes they found too provocative. Though Wilder had no official role beyond acting, he quietly became one of the film's fiercest defenders. In private conversations and internal meetings, Wilder consistently urged Brooks not to compromise the story's edge. He knew that the satire only worked if it didn't pull punches. Wilder understood that Blazing Saddles wasn't just aiming for laughs. It was pushing boundaries to say something uncomfortable, and therefore necessary. He stood firm as pressure mounted to dilute the scenes involving Sheriff Bart or the raw depiction of the townspeople's ignorance. This quiet resistance reflected Wilder's broader view of the industry. He wasn't hostile toward the studio system, but he had little faith in its willingness to embrace real honesty. He believed that comedy, especially satire, should challenge comfort zones, not protect them. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Gene Wilder's hidden impact on Blazing Saddles, be sure to like, drop a comment with your favorite scene, and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes stories you won't hear anywhere else. Don't forget to click on the next video showing on your screen. It's one you won't want to miss.